She hid her scars for years until the Alpha demanded to see them. Lyria moved silently through the misted forest, her cloak brushing the damp earth, leaves clinging to the fabric like tiny whispers of the night. Every step she took was measured, careful, as if the ground itself might betray her. She had learned long ago that trust was a fragile thing, broken too easily by those who sought to take what they could not understand. Her scars were her secret, the hidden marks of a past that no one could see and live to tell. The village beyond the trees slept uneasily, its torches flickering in the wind, casting shadows that danced like spirits on the walls. Lyria's presence among them was tolerated but never fully accepted. People nodded politely, their eyes flicking to her hands, her posture, her calm demeanor. But they never asked, never sought to know her story. That was fine. Secrets were safer than pity, safer than curiosity. Yet tonight, the forest seemed different. The mist was thicker, curling around the trunks of ancient oaks like ghostly serpents. The wind whispered a warning that set her nerves on edge. Something was coming. She felt it before she saw it, a presence that pressed against the soul, demanding attention, bending the very air around it. From the shadows emerged a figure, tall and commanding, a silhouette carved from the night itself. He moved with an ease that was unsettling, as if the darkness obeyed him. Lyria froze, every instinct screaming to turn back, to disappear into the mist. But the figure stopped before her, and she saw him fully for the first time. The Alpha. He was called many names in the whispered tales of the villagers. A shapeshifter lord, a guardian of the wild, a force that no mortal dared confront. His eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, amber and golden, burning with an intensity that left her breathless. There was power in him, undeniable, and yet there was a weight beneath it, a sorrow that lingered like a shadow even in the brightest fire. "You are Lyria," he said, his voice deep and steady, yet softer than she expected. It carried authority, yes, but also curiosity. "I have heard of you." She narrowed her eyes, unwilling to reveal even the smallest tremor of recognition. "Perhaps, or perhaps you have only heard whispers that tell more than they should." He smiled faintly, as though her caution amused him, and yet he did not advance. "Whispers carry truth, though often the truth is hidden under layers of fear." Her hand brushed instinctively over her chest, over the hidden line of scars that had defined her life for so long. She had trusted no one with them, had even fooled herself into believing that they could remain invisible, unseen by the world. Yet here was someone whose gaze seemed to pierce through stone, through shadow, and into the heart itself. "I do not need your knowledge," she said, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. He stepped closer, close enough that the scent of the forest clung to his cloak, mingling with something darker, something ancient. "You will need me soon," he said. "And I will need you as well. That is the way of survival in a world that forgets mercy." She stiffened, the words slicing through the careful calm she had built around herself. "I survive perfectly well alone," she said. "Alone." His amber eyes softened, but only slightly. "Survival is not enough. Strength comes not from hiding, but from revealing what makes you afraid." Lyria's heart clenched. To reveal meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant risk. The world had taught her that lesson in fire and blood. Yet something about his presence stirred a curiosity she could not easily dismiss. "Why me?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "Why seek someone like me?" "Because," he said, tilting his head, "someone has lived through what you have and yet remained unbroken. And I need to know how that is possible." The wind shifted, carrying the faint rustle of leaves, the distant call of a night bird. Lyria felt her pulse quicken, her mind torn between flight and the strange, magnetic pull that drew her to him. She had lived years in shadows, fearing discovery, fearing judgment. And yet, here was someone who did not flinch at her scars, who seemed almost to understand them without explanation. "You do not know what you ask," she said softly, her voice trembling. "These scars, they are not just marks on skin. They are memories, pain, betrayal. I have hidden them because the world cannot bear them. And yet I am not the world, he replied, stepping closer still. There was a gentleness to his approach now, a respect woven into the command of his presence. And I will bear them if you allow me. Lyria hesitated, torn. Years of solitude had shaped her into someone cautious, someone protective of her own story. Yet the way he looked at her, the way his gaze did not recoil in fear or disgust, stirred a longing she had buried deep within herself. "You think you can carry my pain?" she asked, her voice low, almost a whisper. "I think I must," he said. "Because to leave it hidden is to let it fester, to let it define you from the shadows. I will see it, or I will fail in my purpose." The forest seemed to hold its breath as she considered him. There was danger here, yes, the danger of being seen, of being understood. And yet there was something else, something she had not felt in years. The possibility of trust, the possibility that her scars could become a testament to her strength rather than a mark of shame. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she spoke. "If I show you, do not look away, do not flinch. You will see me, every part of me that I have hidden." "I will see you," he promised, and in his eyes she read more than words. Acceptance, recognition, a challenge, and something dangerous and thrilling. A hint of desire tempered by respect. Lyria lowered her cloak slowly, the fabric slipping over her shoulders to reveal the pale, jagged lines of her scars that ran across her arms and chest. She held her breath, bracing for the recoil she had always expected, the judgment she had always feared. But he did not recoil. He did not turn away. He simply studied her, his amber eyes softening yet unyielding, as if he were reading a story written in flesh and shadow. "You have endured more than most could imagine," he said quietly, his voice almost a caress. "And yet, you are not broken." Lyria's chest tightened, a mixture of relief and fear coursing through her. "Do you understand?" she asked, the vulnerability in her voice raw and unpracticed. "I understand more than you know," he replied. "And I will help you bear what the world cannot, but you must trust me. You must let me see not just your scars, but your heart as well." For a long moment she wavered, the weight of years pressing down on her. Trust was dangerous. Trust was pain. Trust was survival. And yet, standing before the Alpha, she felt a flicker of something she had thought lost forever. A chance at connection. A chance at healing. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the faintest hint of danger, a reminder that the world outside the forest did not wait for wounds to mend. Lyria swallowed hard, her decision hanging in the balance. She began, her voice catching. "I do not know if I can." "You can," he said softly, reaching out a hand not to touch but to offer. "And you will, because hiding will no longer serve you. Only in light can shadows be understood, only in trust can strength be renewed." Her pulse raced as she stared into those amber eyes, a storm of fear and longing colliding inside her. She had lived years in hiding, had built walls high enough to keep pain, and perhaps love, at bay. And yet here was someone who did not just demand to see her scars, but who offered to stand beside them, to bear witness without judgment. The forest seemed to lean closer, the mist swirling around them as if holding its breath, waiting for her choice. She clenched her fists, feeling the roughness of her palms, feeling the scars beneath her skin as if they were both chains and keys. Finally, with a trembling exhale, she stepped forward, not fully, but enough that the distance between them narrowed. "I will show you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But you must promise me you will not use this against me. You will not betray me." "I promise," he said, his voice steady, unwavering. "Whatever comes, you will not face it alone." For the first time in years, Lyria felt the tightness in her chest loosen, if only slightly. The Alpha had not flinched. He had not recoiled. And in that moment she realized that perhaps the world was not entirely cruel, and perhaps, just perhaps, she could survive being seen. But even as relief began to seep into her bones, a shadow lingered at the edge of the forest. Something watched, silent and patient, waiting for the moment when her walls would fall completely. And Lyria knew, deep in her heart, that survival would now demand more than hiding. It would demand courage, trust, and a strength she had not yet tested. The Alpha's hand hovered near hers, not touching but present. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice low and certain, "we begin. And the world will see what you have endured. But first, rest. You will need your strength." Lyria nodded, though sleep would not come easily. The mist curled around her like a protective shroud, yet the weight of what lay ahead pressed on her like stone. She had taken the first step, shown the first piece of herself. And the Alpha, he had not looked away. For the first time in years, she felt the stirrings of something dangerous, something exhilarating, hope. And somewhere in the shadows, the Watcher moved closer, unseen, patient, promising that the night held more than the mist, and that the tests of courage, trust, and the heart were only just beginning. The first light of dawn filtered through the mist, painting the forest in soft silver and pale gold. Lyria had barely slept. The memory of showing her scars to the Alpha haunted her, not because of shame, but because of the strange, unsettling calm in his gaze. He had not recoiled, nor had he judged. Instead, he had looked at her as if he understood pain in a way that few could. She had spent years hiding, building walls of silence and solitude. And yet, that night had chipped at those walls, leaving cracks through which fear, hope, and longing began to seep. The forest seemed alive in the early morning, every bird's call and rustling leaf magnified in her awareness. She had chosen to show the Alpha a part of herself no one had ever seen. Now she wondered what it meant, if trust was truly an act of courage, or merely a prelude to betrayal. The Alpha appeared without sound, stepping through the mist as though the forest itself parted for him. His amber eyes caught the first light, glowing softly, a warmth that both comforted and unsettled her. "You are awake," he said, voice low and steady. "Good, we must move quickly." "Move?" Lyria asked, straightening, though tension ran through her body. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere the light does not lie," he replied, "where truth cannot hide behind shadows." She frowned but followed him. His steps were sure, graceful, even in the tangled undergrowth, and though she tried to match him, she struggled to keep pace. The forest seemed denser here, ancient oaks twisting their branches overhead, casting strange, dancing shadows across the mossy ground. "You trust me enough to show your scars," he said after a moment, "but do you trust yourself to face what lies ahead?" "I do not know," she admitted. "I have faced enough already. I do not know if I am ready for more." "You are," he said firmly, yet without harshness. "Your scars are not only marks of pain, they are proof of survival, and you will need that strength soon." Lyria's pulse quickened. She had long known that danger was never far, but his words carried a weight she could not ignore. It was one thing to hide from the world. It was another to be drawn into forces she barely understood. They reached a clearing where the mist thinned, revealing the ruins of an old stone tower. Vines had claimed the walls and broken windows stared like empty eyes. The place radiated history, sorrow, and something darker, an echo of curses long forgotten. "This is where it begins," the Alpha said, pausing at the edge of the clearing. "The truth you hide and the power that seeks to consume it will be tested here." Lyria swallowed. She could feel it. The air itself seemed charged, heavy with anticipation. The ruins whispered secrets, and the shadows of the tower stretched toward them like fingers, beckoning her closer. "Why here?" she asked. "Why not somewhere safer?" "Because the world will not wait for safety," he said. "Only in facing danger can the heart grow strong, and only in confronting darkness can light truly shine." She hesitated, her gaze drawn to the jagged stones and the remnants of fallen walls. "And if I fail?" "You will not fail," he said, stepping closer, his presence pressing against her like the warmth of sunlight on chilled skin. "Not while I stand beside you." Even as his words reassured her, a shiver ran down her spine. The Alpha's presence was comforting, yes, but it was also overwhelming. He was power, tempered with compassion, Yet there was something primal in his energy that made her pulse quicken. She had never been near anyone who could command the air, the forest, and the very essence of night itself. And yet, despite the danger, she did not want to pull away. Inside the ruins, shadows moved differently, twisting and flickering as if alive. Lyria's heart thumped loudly in her chest as the Alpha extended a hand, not touching, merely offering. "Are you ready to step into what has been hidden from you?" She nodded, taking a tentative step forward. Each stone underfoot seemed to hum with history and quiet magic. The air smelled of damp earth and something faintly metallic, as if the tower itself remembered blood and fire. As they moved deeper, the Alpha's voice broke the silence. "There is a curse here, old as the land itself. It seeks to prey on fear, on hesitation, on wounds hidden from the world, and it will find them if you allow it." Lyria's gaze fell to her scars, the hidden history etched into her skin. She had spent years believing that concealing them was her only defense. But now she realized the truth. Hiding did not protect her, it imprisoned her. "What must I do?" she asked, voice tight with both fear and resolve. "Face it," he said simply. "Face it with me. And when you do, you will understand not only your own strength, but the depth of what can be trusted between us." A sudden gust of wind swept through the ruins, rattling the stones and stirring the vines. Shadows lengthened and shifted, coalescing into forms that were almost human, yet not. Dark shapes, intangible but present, moved toward them, carrying a chill that bit at Lyria's skin. The Alpha stepped in front of her, his eyes blazing with amber light. "They are not here to harm you," he said, "unless you fear them. Fear gives them power. Courage gives them nothing." Lyria's hands trembled as she gripped the edges of her cloak. The shapes approached, whispers of voices filling the air, speaking words she could not fully understand. Some were mocking, others sorrowful, all carrying the weight of the past she had tried to bury. "You are stronger than you think," he murmured, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Do not let the past chain you. Let it guide you, let it teach you, but do not let it rule you." Taking a deep breath, Lyria stepped forward. The shadows flickered, twisting as if they sensed her courage. Her scars burned faintly, a reminder of every trial, every betrayal, every moment she had survived. She met each shadow with steady eyes, refusing to turn away, refusing to retreat. The Alpha moved beside her, a silent presence of strength and calm. Together they advanced, and slowly the shadows began to waver, losing shape and substance until they were no more than mist. "You see," he said, voice low and steady. "Courage does not erase fear, but it turns it into something that serves you rather than harms you." Lyria's breath came in short, uneven bursts. She had faced the echoes of the past and survived, guided not by magic alone, but by the strange, unshakable presence of the Alpha beside her. She realized then that her scars, her fears, were not just remnants of pain. They were proof of resilience, of life lived and endured. You were right," she whispered. "It was not the shadows that held power, it was my fear." He nodded, his eyes softening, yet still burning with intensity. "And now you know that you can face more than just shadows. You can face yourself." For a moment, silence settled over the ruins. The wind softened, the mist parted, and the first hints of sunlight fell through the broken walls, illuminating her scars in a way that was almost beautiful. She looked at them not as marks of shame, but as emblems of survival. Yet even in that fragile peace, there was a pulse of tension that Lyria could not ignore. The Alpha's gaze held a question she could not answer, a question about what came next, about the depth of trust, about the dangers that still waited beyond the ruins. "Tell me," he said finally, his voice low, almost intimate. "Do you trust me enough to walk beyond this, into the world that watches and waits?" She hesitated, the weight of years pressing against her courage. To trust him fully would mean revealing not just scars, but fears, dreams, and the fragile hope she had kept hidden. And yet, the thought of stepping forward alone without him felt colder, lonelier than facing the world with him by her side. I think I can," she admitted, her voice trembling but determined. "Then you will," he said simply, "and together we will face what comes. But know this, there are eyes that have always watched and they will not wait patiently forever." A sudden rustle in the undergrowth drew their attention. Lyria's heart leapt as a figure emerged, cloaked and silent, moving with a grace that made the forest itself seem to bend in deference. The alpha's stance shifted, protective and alert, as he stepped slightly in front of her. "You are not alone," he said, more to her than to the intruder. "Not now, not ever." The figure paused, revealing a glimpse of something unnatural in the faint light. It did not move with malice, yet its presence carried an undeniable weight, as if it were both observer and judge. Lyria felt a shiver of recognition, a pull of curiosity and fear intertwined. The alpha's hand hovered near hers, again offering support without touching, strength without demand. "Whatever comes," he said softly, "we face it together." Her pulse quickened, not from fear alone, but from something deeper, something thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. She had survived for years by hiding, by keeping the world at arm's length. And yet, here she was, standing beside the alpha, facing shadows, facing the past, and beginning to understand what it meant to trust. The figure in the shadows moved closer, silent, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. Lyria realized then that her journey was only beginning, that survival, courage, and trust would be tested in ways she had not yet imagined, and through it all, she would not face it alone. The alpha's gaze met hers, amber light steady and unwavering. "Are you ready for what comes next?" he asked. Lyria met his eyes, her own filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "I am," she said, though her heart beat wildly in her chest. "I am ready." And in that moment, the forest seemed to hum with anticipation. Shadows flickered at the edges of perception, secrets whispered among the leaves, and the first true test of courage, trust, and the heart began to unfold. The sun had barely risen when Lyria and the alpha stood at the edge of the ancient forest, the mist still curling among the trees like restless spirits. The ruins behind them, where she had faced the shadows of her past, now seemed almost alive with memory. Stones that had once whispered fear now held the echo of courage. Lyria drew a deep breath, feeling the weight of the journey she had begun. The alpha was silent beside her, his presence a steady force that anchored her. The scars on her arms and chest felt different now, not as marks of shame, but as proof of survival, a map of pain transformed into strength. "Today," he said finally, his voice low and certain, "we face the heart of the curse." She swallowed, her fingers brushing the edges of her cloak. "The heart of the curse?" she asked. "I thought that was behind us." He shook his head slowly. "No. The shadows we faced were only the beginning. True darkness lies deeper. It waits for the weak, the fearful, the unready, and it will not hesitate to take what you try to hide." Lyria's pulse quickened. She had faced fear, yes, but she had never faced something that seemed alive, that sought her not for her flesh, but for her soul. Yet even as dread coursed through her veins, she felt a strange exhilaration. She had survived before, she could survive again. The alpha extended a hand, not commanding but inviting. "Will you trust me?" he asked. She took it, her fingers brushing against his, feeling warmth and strength flowing into her. "I will," she said, voice steady though her heart pounded. "I trust you." Together they stepped into the deeper forest, where the trees grew taller and the shadows darker. The light of the sun barely reached the ground, leaving the undergrowth in a dim green glow. The air was heavy, carrying a faint scent of damp earth and something metallic, as if the forest itself remembered battles long past. The alpha moved with purpose, leading her toward a clearing where the ground was blackened, the trees scorched, and the air thick with the residue of old magic. In the center of the clearing, a stone altar stood, carved with symbols that pulsed faintly with a dark light. "This is it," he said, his eyes scanning the surroundings. "The curse centers here. It draws power from fear, from hidden wounds, from hearts that refuse to open. To break it, you must face not only what you have hidden from the world, but what you have hidden from yourself. Lyria's stomach tightened. She had spent years shielding her scars, her pain, even her desires. To reveal all of that, it was terrifying. And yet, standing beside the Alpha, she felt a courage she had never known before. "What if I fail?" she whispered. "You will not," he said firmly. "Not while you stand with me, not while you choose courage over fear." She nodded, swallowing the tremor in her throat. She stepped forward, letting the shadows stretch toward her, letting the memories rise, pain, betrayal, loss, but also triumph, survival, and the quiet strength she had cultivated in the dark. The symbols on the altar pulsed brighter, reacting to her presence. A cold wind swept through the clearing, carrying whispers in a language she could not understand, yet somehow felt deep in her bones. The shadows coalesced, forming shapes that twisted and writhed, testing her resolve. The Alpha moved closer, his hand brushing hers in a silent promise. "You are stronger than this," he said. "Your scars are not weakness. They are the proof that you endure. Stand tall and let nothing shake you." Lyria's chest rose and fell with steady breaths. She focused on the truth of her own heart, on the courage that had carried her through every trial. The shadows surged, attempting to wrap around her, to pull her into fear. She felt the familiar sting of doubt, but she let it pass, letting her scars remind her that she had survived worse. And then something remarkable happened. The dark shapes faltered, the symbols on the altar dimmed, the whispers grew softer. Lyria realized that the shadows drew their strength not from magic alone, but from the fear she carried. By embracing her pain, by standing unafraid, she weakened the curse. The Alpha's eyes gleamed with pride. "Do you see?" he asked. "Your courage is the key. Your truth, your scars, your heart, they are the light that banishes shadows." Lyria exhaled, a long, shuddering breath. For the first time, she felt the weight of years lift, if only slightly. The darkness that had haunted her, that had threatened to define her, began to dissolve under the force of her own resilience and the quiet strength of the Alpha beside her. Yet even in victory, there was tension, a reminder that the world held more than she had faced. From the tree line, a faint movement caught her eye, a figure cloaked in shadow, watching, waiting. The Alpha noticed too, his stance shifting instantly, protective and alert. "You are not alone," he said, voice steady. "But danger never truly ends. The world always tests those who dare to be strong." Lyria felt a thrill, a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She had survived the curse, faced the shadows, and discovered a courage that had lain dormant. And yet she understood that the journey was not over, not while the forest, the world, and perhaps her own heart held secrets yet to be revealed. The Alpha stepped closer, his presence warm and grounding. "Come," he said softly. "We return to the village. But remember this, the strength you found here is yours. No darkness can take it unless you let it." As they walked back through the forest, the mist beginning to thin, Lyria felt a quiet shift within her. She had hidden her scars for years, believing they made her weak. Now she knew they were proof of life, of survival, of a heart capable of enduring and loving. The village appeared on the horizon, its rooftops bathed in the morning light. Children ran through the streets, unaware of the shadows that lingered in the forest, of the magic that still pulsed beneath the land. Lyria felt a pang of something she had long denied: hope. The world might still be dangerous, cruel, unpredictable, but it could also be lived in, embraced, even loved. The Alpha turned to her as they approached the village gates. "You have done more than survive," he said. "You have grown. And that growth will carry you further than you know." She looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude and something deeper, something fragile and thrilling. "I could not have done this alone," she admitted. "You never had to be alone," he said, amber eyes softening. "Not now, not ever." A sudden movement in the village caught their attention. A messenger, breathless, came running toward them, holding a sealed scroll. The Alpha took it, breaking the wax with a practiced hand. His expression darkened as he read. "They know," he said quietly, tension threading his voice. "Our actions here have been noticed. The darkness beyond the forest is not gone. It watches. It waits." Lyria felt a chill run down her spine. She had faced fear, confronted shadows, embraced her scars, and yet the world was not finished testing her. The safety of the village, the peace she had glimpsed, hung by a fragile thread. "Then we face it," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor of fear beneath. "Together," the Alpha nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "Together," he agreed. As they moved through the village, Lyria felt something remarkable. The people who had once watched her with suspicion or fear now gave subtle nods, recognition, respect. Perhaps it was her courage. Perhaps it was the presence of the Alpha. Or perhaps it was the aura of transformation that surrounded her. Proof that scars could not only tell a story of survival, but also inspire it in others. Yet as they reached the edge of the village and looked back toward the forest, Lyria's heart tightened. The shadowy figure from the ruins had not followed, but she knew, instinctively, that it had not gone. It waited, patient, inevitable, a reminder that every victory carried a cost and every courage demanded another test. The Alpha sensed her unease. "Do not dwell on what watches," he said gently. "Focus on what you have learned. The power of truth, the strength of courage, the bond of trust, these are the weapons that will carry you forward." Lyria nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle deep within her. She had hidden her scars for years, believing that concealment was protection. Now she knew the opposite. To reveal, to face, to trust was the path to freedom. They walked toward the rising sun, the forest behind them still shrouded in mist, the unknown watching from the shadows. And as they moved, Lyria felt a new certainty, that she was no longer the woman who hid, who trembled at the world. She was a woman who had faced the darkness, stood unbroken, and discovered a strength that even the shadows could not claim. And beside her the Alpha remained, a guardian of courage, a witness to survival, and a reminder that trust, once given, could transform not only the heart but the world itself.